Michael had always dreamed of owning a car that would turn heads, something that would not just be a machine on wheels, but a symbol of how far he had come in life. After years of saving money, working overtime, and making sacrifices that many of his friends never noticed, he finally bought himself a brand new Corvette. It wasn't just a car for him. It was proof that persistence, discipline, and patience eventually paid off. His pride in the Corvette was not only about its sleek black finish or the way the engine purred like a lion ready to leap. It was about the fact that for years he had convinced himself dreams were meant for others, not for him. Michael was in his mid-40s, a hard-working man who had raised his son David with strong values. Owning something as luxurious as a Corvette felt almost unreal, and he wanted to share that joy with his son more than anyone else. David, who had just turned 20, was as excited about the Corvette as his father was. For him, it wasn't about showing off. It was about watching his dad finally smile in triumph. Michael had spent most of his life taking care of others, never indulging himself. The Corvette was more than a car. It was a celebration of family resilience. One warm Saturday afternoon, Michael decided to take David out for a drive. The neighborhood streets shimmered under the sunlight as the polished surface of the Corvette reflected everything around it like a mirror. The sound of the engine caught attention instantly. Some neighbors waved, others gave admiring looks, and children pointed with wide eyes. For the first time in years, Michael felt that he had something that made him stand out. But not everyone saw it that way. Among the neighbors was Karen, a woman known for her sharp tongue and entitled attitude. She was the type who thought the world owed her everything. Her son Ryan had grown up learning those same attitudes. Ryan was spoiled, arrogant, and often careless with other people's belongings. He was only a year older than David, but unlike David, he never understood the value of respect or hard work. He had been handed things his entire life. That day, as Michael parked the Corvette in front of his house, Ryan noticed it immediately. His eyes lit up with a kind of greedy excitement, and he rushed to his mother, exclaiming about the car. Karen, who believed her son deserved everything he wanted, didn't think twice before walking across the street toward Michael's driveway with Ryan trailing behind her. "Wow. Michael," Karen said loudly, her voice carrying across the street. "That's a nice car you've got there." Ryan was just saying how much he'd love to take it for a spin. Michael turned, a polite smile on his face, though he already felt uneasy. He knew the type of person Ryan was, careless, reckless, and disrespectful. There was no way he would hand over his brand new Corvette to him. Before Michael could respond, David stepped forward almost instinctively. "Sorry, but that's not happening," David said firmly. His tone was calm but clear. "This car is my dad's dream. He worked really hard for it, and it's not for anyone else to drive." Ryan's face twisted in annoyance. "What's the big deal?" he said, trying to brush it off casually. "It's just a car. Don't be so protective." David stood his ground. "It's not just a car. It's his car, and you don't have the right to ask for it like that." Karen's smile disappeared and her eyes narrowed. She had never liked David's confidence. She always saw it as disrespectful, as if he dared to challenge her authority in the neighborhood. "Excuse me?" she snapped. "Who do you think you're talking to? If my son wants to test out the car, you should be honored he's even interested. Don't forget, we all live in the same community. It's about sharing." Michael finally spoke, his voice calm but firm.
"Karen, I appreciate your son's interest, but this car isn't for anyone else to drive."
"I've waited a long time for this, and I'm not comfortable letting Ryan take it out." Ryan scoffed, shaking his head. "Unbelievable. You're acting like this is some kind of treasure. It's just a Corvette." David clenched his fists at his side, trying to stay composed. "Exactly. It's my dad's Corvette. That means you don't get to touch it." The tension in the air thickened, and neighbors began to peek out their windows. Some even stepped onto their porches, sensing that something was about to happen. Karen, embarrassed by the growing audience, doubled down instead of walking away. "Fine," Karen said, her voice rising. "If you're going to be rude and deny my son something so simple, then don't be surprised if the police get involved." "You can't just treat people like this." Michael raised his eyebrows in disbelief. "The police? For what, Karen? For saying no?" "Yes," she snapped. "For discrimination. You're treating my son unfairly, and I won't stand for it." David's jaw dropped. "You're kidding, right? We're not discriminating. We just don't want him driving the car." Karen pulled out her phone dramatically. "We'll see what the police have to say about this." Michael shook his head, deeply disappointed but not entirely surprised. He had seen Karen pull stunts like this before, though never at this level. She always believed rules didn't apply to her, that her word carried more weight than anyone else's. The phone call that followed was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Karen exaggerated every detail, making it sound like David had been aggressive, like Michael was being unfair and hostile, and like Ryan was the victim of some imagined slight. David stood frozen, torn between anger and disbelief. "Dad, she's actually doing it. She's calling 911 because I told Ryan he can't drive your car." Michael placed a hand on his son's shoulder. His expression was calm, but inside his heart raced with frustration. He hated seeing his son pulled into such a ridiculous situation. "It's all right, David. Let her do what she wants. We'll handle it." Across the street, neighbors whispered to one another. Some shook their heads, muttering about Karen's behavior. Others looked worried about how far this was going to go. The air seemed to hum with tension, waiting for what would happen when the police actually arrived. Ryan, meanwhile, smirked with satisfaction. He clearly believed his mother's call would get him what he wanted. To him, authority always seemed to bend in his favor. David caught the smirk and felt his blood boil, but he stayed silent, remembering his father's calm presence beside him. Minutes felt like hours as the sound of sirens grew closer. David's stomach tightened. He had never been in trouble with the police before, and the idea of them showing up because of something this absurd was humiliating. He glanced at his father, who gave him a reassuring nod. "This isn't about the car anymore," Michael said softly, almost to himself. "It's about people like Karen thinking they can push others around. But we'll stand our ground. We've done nothing wrong." And as the red and blue lights appeared at the end of the street, flashing against the polished surface of the Corvette, David realized this was only the beginning of a long, emotional battle, one that would test not just their patience, but also their dignity in the face of injustice. The wailing of sirens grew louder as the police car turned into the quiet suburban street. Michael could feel his heart beat faster, though he tried to maintain a calm exterior. He didn't want David to panic or feel responsible for something absurd that was clearly out of their control. David, standing beside his father, swallowed hard and shifted nervously from foot to foot. Karen waved at the approaching police officers with exaggerated urgency. Her phone still pressed to her ear as if to emphasize the importance of her call. Her son, Ryan, lingered nearby, trying to look casual but unable to hide the smirk of anticipation that spread across his face. He was clearly confident that his mother's actions would force Michael and David into submission. The first officer stepped out of the car, a tall man with a kind face and a careful demeanor. His name tag read Officer Lewis. He scanned the scene, taking in Michael's Corvette, Karen's furious gestures, and David's tense posture. "Good afternoon," Officer Lewis said politely, holding up his hands in a gesture meant to calm everyone. "We received a call about a dispute involving a vehicle. Can someone explain what's happening?" Karen jumped in immediately, her voice sharp and accusatory. "Officer, this man refuses to let my son test drive his brand new car. He's being completely unfair. My son has every right to access it, and they're discriminating against him." David felt his face flush, disbelief written plainly across his features. "Discriminating? Officer, we're not discriminating. We just don't want him driving our car. That's all?" Officer Lewis turned to Michael. "Sir, can you tell me your side of the story?" Michael took a deep breath, trying to stay as composed as possible. "Yes, officer. I just bought this Corvette. It's my car, and my son and I have been enjoying it together. Ryan approached us and asked to drive it, and we said no. There's no discrimination here. This is simply a personal decision about who can drive my property." Karen scoffed loudly. "Oh, come on. He's treating my son like he's not worthy. This is ridiculous. People should share, especially in a community like ours." Officer Lewis listened quietly, nodding slightly. He looked at Ryan, who now seemed a bit uncertain, seeing the seriousness on the officer's face. "Ryan, do you want to tell me your side?" the officer asked gently. Ryan opened his mouth but quickly closed it. He wasn't used to being asked politely to explain himself. He shuffled his feet, clearly uncomfortable, then muttered, "I just wanted to see the car. That's all." Officer Lewis turned back to Michael and David. "Sir, based on what I'm hearing, there doesn't appear to be any legal reason your son can't say no. You're within your rights as the owner of the vehicle." Michael's shoulders relaxed slightly. He had expected some tension, but it was reassuring to hear the officer confirm the obvious. David let out a small, relieved sigh, though the unease from the confrontation still lingered. Karen's face fell. Her mouth opened and closed a few times before she managed, but it's unfair. My son should be allowed to drive it. You're picking favorites. Officer Lewis raised a hand calmly. Ma'am, this isn't about favoritism. It's about consent and personal property. No one is forcing anyone to allow someone else to drive their car. As long as there's no damage or threat of harm, there's no legal violation here. Karen's jaw tightened and she muttered under her breath. Michael could barely hear her, but her frustration was palpable. She glanced at her son, whose smugness had completely disappeared now that he realized he wasn't going to get what he wanted. Okay, I think that settles it, Officer Lewis said. I just wanted to make sure everyone understood the situation. I'll be leaving now, but if there's any further issue, please try to resolve it without calling emergency services unnecessarily. Karen clenched her phone tightly, then finally hung up. She shot one last glare at Michael and David before walking back toward her house, dragging Ryan behind her. Both of them looked embarrassed now, the thrill of confrontation completely gone. Once the officers drove away, Michael turned to David. I know that was stressful. I'm proud of you for standing your ground. You did exactly what was right. David nodded, his hand still trembling slightly. It's crazy, Dad. I can't believe she actually called 911 over a car. And to say we were discriminating? It doesn't even make sense, Michael smiled gently. Sometimes people say things that don't make sense. That's on them. What matters is that we stayed calm and did the right thing. They walked toward the Corvette together, and Michael ran his hands over the polished surface, taking in the sight of the car once more. You know, David, I've worked my whole life for moments like this. And even though today was stressful, I'm glad you were there to share it with me. David smiled, feeling a swell of pride for his father. I'm glad too, Dad. I just wish things like this didn't happen. I hate seeing people act like that and try to make us feel bad for standing up for ourselves. Michael nodded, understanding. Me too, son. But this is part of life. Not everyone will understand hard work, respect, or patience. And that's why moments like this are so important. They show us who we are and what we value. For the rest of the afternoon, Michael and David took turns driving the Corvette slowly around the neighborhood. They waved at neighbors, laughed about small jokes, and shared stories. The stress from the earlier confrontation slowly melted away. However, deep down, Michael knew this wasn't the end. Karen had shown a willingness to escalate conflicts over the smallest things, and he worried she might try to cause more trouble. He also realized that it was a lesson he wanted David to remember: the importance of staying calm and confident, even when faced with irrational behavior. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Michael parked the Corvette back in the driveway. He and David sat on the curb, watching the colors reflect off the shiny black surface. You know, Dad, David said softly, even though today was scary, I learned something important. It's not just about standing up for ourselves. It's about doing it with respect and patience. Michael smiled warmly. Exactly, son. That's the lesson. People like Karen will always exist, but we can't let them dictate how we feel or how we act. Our actions, our patience, and our values define us, not their words. For the first time that day, both father and son felt a genuine sense of peace. The Corvette, gleaming in the evening light, had become more than just a car. It symbolized resilience, patience, and standing firm in what was right. As they went inside for dinner, Michael glanced back at the driveway and whispered to himself, no matter what happens, this car is ours, just like our dignity and pride, and nothing can take that away. The next morning, Michael woke to the sound of birds chirping outside and the soft hum of traffic in the neighborhood. The events of the previous day still lingered in his mind like a shadow, though he was determined not to let it ruin his day. David had already left for his part-time job at the local bookstore, waving goodbye with a bright smile that reminded Michael why it was important to stay calm and composed no matter what challenges came their way. Michael poured himself a cup of coffee and stepped out onto the porch, taking in the quiet morning. The Corvette gleamed in the sunlight, parked perfectly in the driveway. It seemed to sparkle with triumph, almost as if it knew it had survived the storm of the day before. Michael ran his hand along the smooth hood, appreciating the sense of accomplishment and pride that came with owning something he had worked so hard for. Just as he was about to head back inside, he noticed movement across the street. Karen was outside again, pacing in her yard while talking on her phone. Michael felt a wave of unease. He had hoped that yesterday's confrontation and the police visit would be enough to deter her from further escalation, but it seemed she had not learned her lesson. He watched as Ryan emerged from their house, holding a small package and glancing over at the Corvette. Ryan's expression was a mix of frustration and curiosity, as if he couldn't decide whether he wanted to confront them again or simply sulk in disappointment. Michael shook his head and muttered under his breath, "Here we go again." By mid-morning, Karen had crossed the street and approached Michael's driveway. This time she was carrying a clipboard and a stack of papers, looking more prepared and determined than before. "Michael," she called, her voice carrying a sense of authority she believed she possessed. "I've been talking to the Homeowners Association, and I think we need to have a discussion about how you're treating my son. He has rights too, and this situation cannot continue like this." Michael's brow furrowed. "Karen, we've already spoken about this. There's no law requiring me to let someone drive my car. I understand you're upset, but there's nothing more to discuss." Karen ignored him and started reading from her clipboard. "According to some of the neighborhood guidelines, everyone must allow reasonable access to shared community resources. Ryan's request to test your car seems perfectly reasonable. You're creating tension in the neighborhood, and I intend to ensure this is resolved fairly." David, returning home from work for his lunch break, spotted his father talking to Karen. His eyes narrowed as he approached, sensing the rising tension immediately. "Dad, what's going on now?" he asked quietly. Michael gestured for him to stay calm. "Karen's trying to make this bigger than it is. She's going to complain to the Homeowners Association now." David glanced at Karen, who was pacing back and forth while muttering something to herself. He felt a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "Seriously? Over a car? We handled this yesterday and now she wants to make it an official issue?" Michael nodded. "People like her never see reason. The important thing is that we stay respectful and calm no matter what she says." Karen finally looked at David, her eyes narrowing. "And you? Standing there like you know better than everyone else, you should be teaching your father to cooperate. It's not just about him. It's about the community." David took a deep breath, feeling the weight of irritation and responsibility at the same time. "I'm not telling my dad what to do. He knows what's right and what you're asking is wrong. That's it." Karen's expression darkened, and she muttered something under her breath before storming back across the street, leaving David and Michael alone with a sense of tension that hung in the air like humidity before a storm. Michael leaned against the Corvette, exhaling slowly. "I was hoping yesterday would be the end of it," he said, his voice calm but tinged with frustration. "But I guess we can't always control other people." David nodded. "I know, Dad, I hate that she keeps trying to make us feel guilty for standing up for ourselves. It's exhausting." Michael smiled softly. "I understand, son, but that's the lesson here. Sometimes standing up for what's right isn't about convincing others. It's about knowing we're doing the right thing ourselves." As the day went on, Michael and David decided to focus on other things. They cleaned the house, organized the garage, and even took the Corvette for a short drive down to the lake nearby. The water shimmered under the late afternoon sun, and the peaceful atmosphere helped both of them relax. Michael enjoyed seeing David's laughter fill the car as they drove along winding roads, the sound of the engine echoing softly. But the peace was short-lived. Later that evening, while Michael was inside preparing dinner, he heard a knock at the front door. When he opened it, he found Karen standing there once more, holding a small notebook and a pen. "Michael," she said, her tone unusually calm but still firm, "I wanted to give you one last chance to consider letting Ryan drive the Corvette. I've documented everything now, and I'm prepared to bring this before the neighborhood council if necessary." Michael closed the door slightly, keeping a polite but firm hold. "Karen, we've explained this multiple times. Ryan will not be driving the car. This is my property and my decision is final. There's nothing else to discuss." Karen raised an eyebrow. "I see. So you're refusing even with the council involved?" "Yes," Michael said simply. "I've made my decision. My son and I enjoy this car and it's not up for debate." Karen muttered something under her breath, then finally walked away. Michael closed the door completely, feeling a mix of relief and lingering unease. That should be the end of it, he said to himself. David, who had just returned from his evening shift, came into the kitchen. "Dad, she was at the door again?" he asked, noticing the look on Michael's face. "Yes," Michael replied. "She's determined to escalate this, but we've done nothing wrong. We just have to stay calm and not let her actions affect us." David nodded, though he looked worried. "It's hard seeing someone act like that. It feels unfair." Michael placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "Life isn't always fair, David, but fairness doesn't define our actions. Integrity does. As long as we know we're doing the right thing, nothing else really matters." That night, as they sat together in the living room, the stress of the day slowly melted away. Michael poured them both glasses of lemonade, and they reminisced about happier memories, sharing laughs and stories from David's childhood. Despite the tension with Karen, Michael felt a renewed sense of pride in his son. David had handled himself with maturity, standing up for what was right without letting anger take over. That was a lesson worth more than any argument or confrontation. Before heading to bed, Michael stepped outside one last time to admire the Corvette under the soft glow of the porch light. The events of the past 2 days had tested both him and David, but he realized that moments like this were what truly mattered. The car was not just a symbol of success, but also a reminder of resilience, patience, and the importance of standing firm in the face of unreasonable people. As he closed the garage door, Michael whispered softly, almost to himself, "No matter what happens, we've done the right thing, and that's all that counts." Little did he know, Karen's persistence was far from over. Her determination to challenge them would continue to push boundaries, creating a new series of conflicts that neither Michael nor David could have anticipated. But for now, they could breathe, knowing they had stayed true to themselves and their values. The following week brought a mixture of tension and unease to Michael and David's usually calm neighborhood. Though the Corvette gleamed in the driveway like a trophy, it had also become a symbol of the conflict that lingered just beneath the surface. Michael tried to focus on work, while David returned to his routine at the bookstore, but the memory of Karen's persistence remained in their minds. One afternoon, Michael noticed a letter slipped under his front door. He picked it up, recognizing the official-looking envelope from the neighborhood council. His heart sank slightly. He opened it carefully, scanning the contents. Karen had formally submitted a complaint, claiming that Michael was unreasonably denying access to community resources, citing rules about fairness and neighborly cooperation. Michael rubbed his forehead. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "All this over a car." David, who had just come home from work, noticed the letter in his father's hand. "Dad, what's wrong?" Michael handed it to him. "Karen has filed a complaint with the council. She's trying to make this bigger than it needs to be." David read the letter quickly, his eyebrows knitting together. "Dad, she's really going all out. But it's still nonsense. There's nothing illegal about not letting someone drive your car." "I know," Michael replied. "But sometimes people try to use rules to get what they want. That's what we're dealing with now." The next day, Michael received a call from the council, asking him to attend a meeting to address Karen's complaint. He knew that ignoring it could make matters worse, so he agreed. He also insisted that David come along. "You've been part of this from the start," Michael said. "I want you there to see how to handle things with calm and confidence." When the day of the meeting arrived, Michael and David entered the small council room, the polished wood tables reflecting the bright overhead lights. Karen was already there, looking triumphant as if victory was already hers. Ryan sat beside her, fidgeting with his phone, clearly uncomfortable in the formal setting. The council chair, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Thompson, greeted them politely. "We've received a complaint from Karen regarding access to your vehicle. Mr. Anderson," she said, turning to Michael, "would you like to explain your side of the story?" Michael nodded, keeping his voice calm and steady. "Yes, ma'am. The Corvette in question is my personal property. I recently purchased it after years of hard work, and it is not intended for general use. I am proud to share it with my family, but I have the right to decide who drives it. This decision is not discriminatory or unfair. It is simply my choice as the owner." Karen's expression hardened, but she spoke anyway. "The issue here is that David and I live in the same community. We should cooperate, and it's unreasonable to deny my son the opportunity to test the car. He's just curious and wants to learn more about it." Michael glanced at David, who remained quiet but steady. Michael could see the determination in his son's eyes, a reflection of his own values. He took a deep breath. "Mrs. Thompson, there is no rule that requires me to allow someone to drive my car. My son and I are following all community guidelines, and I hope the council will see that we are acting reasonably." Mrs. Thompson nodded thoughtfully, taking notes. "I appreciate your explanation, Mr. Anderson. Karen, do you have any further points?" Karen shook her head. "No, but I still believe my son should be considered." The council deliberated for a few minutes. Finally, Mrs. Thompson spoke. "After reviewing the situation and listening to both sides, the council has decided that Mr. Anderson is within his rights to determine who can drive his personal vehicle. Karen's complaint is noted, but no action will be taken against Mr. Anderson or his family." A quiet tension filled the room. Karen's face fell and Ryan avoided looking at Michael and David. Michael felt a wave of relief. Though the ordeal had been unnecessary, it was reassuring to see that reason and fairness prevailed. As they left the council room, David smiled at his father. "See, Dad? We stood our ground and it worked. People can't push us around when we're calm and honest." Michael smiled back, proud of his son. "Exactly, David. The important thing is knowing we did the right thing. That's always more important than arguing with someone unreasonable." Back at home, the Corvette sparkled under the afternoon sun. Michael and David washed it together, taking pride in the process. Laughter filled the driveway as they polished the car, feeling a sense of accomplishment that went beyond its shiny exterior. However, Michael couldn't shake a small worry. Karen might have lost this round, but her persistence meant that more challenges could be coming. He resolved to stay vigilant and to use this as a learning moment for David, how to face conflicts with patience and composure. That evening, as they sat on the porch enjoying iced tea, Michael spoke gently. "David, you handled yourself well through all of this. Remember, there will always be people who test our patience or try to push boundaries. How we respond says more about us than it does about them." David nodded thoughtfully. "I get it, Dad. Standing up for ourselves isn't just about saying no, it's about staying respectful and confident. That's what matters." Michael smiled, proud of his son's understanding. "Exactly. And the Corvette? Well, it's a reminder of what hard work and perseverance can achieve. Not just a car, but a lesson in life." As night fell, the neighborhood quieted and the Corvette rested safely in the driveway. Michael felt a sense of peace. For the first time since the conflict began, he allowed himself to relax fully, knowing that he and David had faced the challenge together and come out stronger. Yet, deep down, he knew that challenges like Karen's would never completely disappear. Some people thrived on conflict and entitlement, but Michael also knew that their strength came from staying true to their principles. And as he turned off the porch light and headed inside, he whispered softly, "No matter what happens next, we'll face it together, and we'll do it right." The weekend arrived, bringing a sense of calm to the neighborhood, though Michael knew better than to think Karen had truly given up. Over the past week, they had returned to a routine, David spending time at the bookstore and Michael catching up on work. The Corvette, parked gleaming in the driveway, felt like a small victory, but Michael kept an eye out for any signs of trouble. On Saturday morning, David suggested they take the Corvette for a drive along the countryside roads a few miles outside town. "Dad, it's beautiful this time of year," he said, excitement in his voice. "The trees, the air. It'll be a perfect day for the car." Michael smiled. "You're right. Let's go. We could both use a little break from the neighborhood drama." As they drove along winding roads, the sunlight bouncing off the black exterior of the Corvette, David felt a sense of freedom and joy. It was a rare moment when the events of the past days seemed distant, almost like a bad dream fading away. Michael, driving with a relaxed but careful hand, enjoyed seeing his son so happy. They stopped at a small roadside cafe to grab some coffee and snacks. Sitting outside with the Corvette parked in front, they laughed about memories from their past road trips and talked about future plans. For a brief moment, the stress and tension of Karen's antics were forgotten. However, as they were getting ready to leave, Michael noticed a familiar figure approaching from down the street. It was Karen striding toward them with determined steps and Ryan trailing behind with a nervous expression. Michael felt a flash of irritation, but he kept his tone calm. "Karen," he said politely, "this is a public area, but we were just leaving. Is there something you need?" Karen didn't seem to hear him. She spoke to the small group of people who had gathered around the cafe. "You won't believe this. Michael Anderson refuses to allow my son even the smallest access to his car. It's unfair, and the community should know." David felt a surge of frustration. "Dad, she's at it again," he muttered quietly. Michael nodded, taking a deep breath. "It's all right, son. We've handled this before. Let's stay calm." Karen began speaking loudly to anyone who would listen, attempting to draw attention to her cause. She described the situation as if Michael and David were villains, ignoring all facts. But Michael noticed something interesting. Many people who overheard her looked skeptical. They had seen her behavior before and could tell that her story was exaggerated. One elderly neighbor, Mrs. Carter, stepped forward gently. "Karen, I don't think it's fair to make this a big deal. Mr. Anderson has every right to decide who drives his own car. I've seen how carefully he treats his things, and this Corvette is no exception." Karen's face twisted in frustration, but she tried to maintain her composure. Ryan, standing beside her, avoided looking at the neighbors and seemed to shrink under the attention. Michael leaned slightly toward David. "See, son? Sometimes people like Karen will try to create a storm, but the truth speaks for itself. People notice when someone is unreasonable." David nodded. "I guess you're right. It's just tiring having to deal with her every day." Michael smiled softly. "I know, but every time we respond with patience and integrity, we're teaching something more valuable than any argument. We're showing strength and character." After a few moments, Karen realized that no one else seemed to support her claims. With a dramatic sigh, she muttered something under her breath and walked back toward her house, Ryan reluctantly following. Michael and David waited until they were safely gone before returning to the Corvette. As they drove back home, David said quietly, "Dad, I think this is the first time she's really realized that people aren't on her side. Maybe she's finally learning she can't push everyone around." Michael nodded, but his expression remained thoughtful. "Perhaps, but we can't count on that. People like her often come back. The important thing is that we remain consistent and true to our values no matter what she tries." Once they arrived home, Michael decided to give the Corvette a thorough cleaning. As he polished the hood and wheels, he felt a sense of pride, not just in the car but in the way he and David had handled themselves. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about protecting what was rightfully theirs while remaining respectful. David joined him, and together they worked in silence for a while. The sun cast a golden glow across the driveway, and for the first time in days, Michael felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. It wasn't just a car anymore, it was a symbol of resilience, patience, and family unity. Later that evening, as they sat on the porch enjoying iced tea and watching the sunset, Michael reflected on the past week. "You know, David, owning this car has been amazing, but the real lesson isn't the Corvette. It's what it represents. Standing up for yourself, being patient, and handling conflict with integrity." David nodded, thinking deeply. "I get it, Dad. It's not about winning every argument. It's about staying true to who we are, even when others try to make things difficult." Michael smiled warmly. "Exactly, son. That's the lesson I hope you'll carry with you for the rest of your life." As night fell, the neighborhood grew quiet. The Corvette rested in the driveway, gleaming under the soft glow of the porch light. Michael and David went inside for dinner, enjoying a peaceful evening together. Though Karen's presence lingered in the back of their minds, they had learned to rise above her attempts to create conflict. Before going to bed, Michael stepped outside one last time. He gazed at the car and whispered softly, "No matter what happens next, we've faced challenges together and stayed strong. That's what matters." David, watching from the doorway, smiled. "We've come a long way, Dad, and I think we're ready for whatever comes next." Michael nodded. "Yes, son. Whatever comes next, we face it together with patience, respect, and integrity. That's how we win in the end." The week following their countryside drive passed quietly, and Michael and David began to feel a sense of relief. Karen had not appeared in front of their house or at the neighborhood council since the last confrontation, and for the first time, it seemed like she might finally be backing down. Michael enjoyed seeing David's calm demeanor return, and he felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that they had handled every challenge with patience and integrity. One warm Friday afternoon, Michael decided to take the Corvette out for a spin on his own. It was a chance to clear his mind after a long week of work and reflect on everything that had happened. The streets were empty, the sun glinting off the polished surface of the car, and the engine purred like a contented lion. Michael smiled as he felt the freedom of the open road, knowing that the Corvette symbolized more than just speed and style. It represented years of hard work, patience, and perseverance. When he returned home, David was waiting on the porch, a small grin on his face. "Dad, I thought I might take a short drive with you this evening, just around the neighborhood to enjoy the sunset." Michael nodded. "That sounds perfect, son." They drove slowly along the quiet streets, waving at neighbors who gave friendly nods and smiles. Unlike the tension-filled days that had passed, today felt peaceful. The neighborhood seemed to reflect their calmness, with children playing in yards and the soft chatter of people enjoying the evening. As they pulled back into the driveway, Michael noticed a familiar figure watching them from across the street. Karen stood in her yard, her arms crossed, staring at the Corvette. For a moment, Michael felt a flash of irritation, but he quickly reminded himself to remain calm. He glanced at David, who seemed to share the same thought. Karen took a few steps forward, and Michael expected another confrontation. Instead, she stopped and muttered something to herself before walking back into her house. Ryan, who had been standing beside her, followed silently, looking somewhat embarrassed. Michael and David exchanged glances, both silently acknowledging that this was a small victory. Inside the house, Michael poured some lemonade for them both, and they sat at the kitchen table. "It looks like she's finally giving up," David said quietly, still cautious. Michael nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps. But the important thing isn't that she gives up, it's that we stayed true to ourselves." "That's what really matters," David smiled, a sense of pride in his eyes. "I feel proud, Dad. We didn't let her push us around, and we kept our heads clear the whole time. I learned a lot about patience and standing firm." Michael reached out and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "And that's the lesson, David. Life will always have people who test us. The way we respond with calm and integrity is what shapes who we are." Later that evening, they took the Corvette out one more time to watch the sunset from a hill overlooking the town. The sky glowed with shades of orange and pink, and the air was filled with the quiet hum of nature. Michael parked the car, and they both stepped out to enjoy the view. "This is perfect," David said softly. "All the stress from the past days, it feels like it's finally behind us." Michael nodded, feeling a deep sense of contentment. "Yes, son. It's a reminder that even when life gets complicated, there's always a way to stay true to yourself and handle things with dignity." As they sat on the hood of the Corvette, watching the last light of day fade into night, Michael reflected on the journey they had experienced. The challenges with Karen had been frustrating, even exhausting at times, but they had taught both him and David valuable lessons about patience, courage, and the importance of standing firm without losing composure. David broke the silence. "Dad, do you think people like Karen will ever change?" Michael smiled gently. "Some people never change, but that's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to stay true to ourselves and handle situations the right way. If she learns from this, that's good. If not, at least we know we acted with integrity." David nodded thoughtfully. "I like that. I want to remember this lesson for the future. No matter who challenges me, I'll stay calm and true to my values." Michael patted his son's shoulder. "I'm proud of you, David. You've grown a lot through all of this. And the Corvette, well, it's more than just a car now. It's a symbol of perseverance, patience, and the bond we share as father and son." The following days returned to normal. Michael continued his work. David kept up with his bookstore job, and the Corvette sat gleaming in the driveway as a reminder of their victory over unnecessary conflict. Karen still lived across the street, but her attempts to involve them in arguments seemed to fade. It was as if the neighborhood itself had subtly shifted, recognizing who acted with reason and who acted out of entitlement. One sunny afternoon, Michael and David decided to take the Corvette out for a longer drive. They explored the countryside, taking scenic routes and stopping at small towns along the way. The joy of the drive wasn't about showing off the car. It was about freedom, family, and the satisfaction of having overcome challenges together. At one stop, David looked at his father with a smile. "Dad, do you remember how tense everything was at the beginning? I can't believe how much has changed in just a few weeks." Michael laughed softly. "Yes, I remember. But that's the beauty of life. Even when things seem difficult, we can handle them, learn from them, and come out stronger." As they returned home that evening, the Corvette resting safely in the driveway, Michael felt a profound sense of peace. The neighborhood, the house, and the car had become more than just possessions or locations. They were symbols of family, perseverance, and the values that guided their lives. David stepped out of the car and stretched, looking at the polished surface of the Corvette. "Dad, I'm glad we stayed patient and didn't let her get to us. It feels good to know we did the right thing." Michael smiled, placing a hand on the hood. "Exactly, David, that's the important part. We can't control how others act, but we can always control how we respond. And if we respond with integrity, we always win in the end." That night, as they sat together enjoying a quiet dinner, Michael reflected on the entire ordeal. The conflict with Karen had tested them in ways he had never imagined, but it had also strengthened their bond and taught them lessons that no money or material possession could provide. After cleaning up, Michael and David stepped onto the porch one last time to admire the Corvette under the soft glow of the porch light. It sparkled, reflecting the peaceful neighborhood around it. Michael whispered softly, "No matter what happens, this car will always remind us of patience, perseverance, and standing strong together." David nodded, his eyes filled with understanding and pride. "And we'll carry these lessons with us, Dad. Always." As the stars appeared in the night sky, Michael and David shared a quiet moment of gratitude and reflection. They had faced unnecessary conflict, remained true to their values, and come out stronger. The Corvette wasn't just a car anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, family, and the rewards of integrity. For Michael and David, life returned to its calm, ordinary rhythm, but with a deeper appreciation for patience, respect, and standing firm. Karen's attempts to cause trouble faded into memory, a lesson in the limits of entitlement and the power of character. And as they closed the garage door that night, Michael felt an unspoken certainty. No matter what challenges the future held, they would face them together, with courage, dignity, and unwavering integrity.